I discovered someone was stealing my trash service on a Tuesday morning in late March, when I noticed my recycling bin had been dragged halfway down the driveway and left there, overflowing with bottles I had never purchased. My name is Lucas Quincy, and I had been living in the Meadowbrook Estates development in Scottsdale, Arizona, for about 18 months at that point. The neighborhood was one of those cookie-cutter suburban communities, where every house looked like a slightly different version of the same beige dream, and the homeowners association ruled with an iron fist wrapped in passive-aggressive notices printed on cream-colored cardstock. I walked down my driveway that morning, coffee mug in hand, staring at the bin with genuine confusion. The recycling truck had already come through, which happened every Tuesday at around 6 in the morning. My bin should have been empty and sitting near the curb where I left it the night before. Instead, it was half full of wine bottles, kombucha containers, and what appeared to be the remnants of someone's obsession with sparkling water. "What the hell?" I muttered, setting my coffee on the hood of my car. I pulled the bin closer and examined the contents more carefully. None of this was mine. I drank beer occasionally and regular tap water the rest of the time. I had never purchased a single bottle of rosé in my entire life, yet here were at least a dozen empty bottles with the labels still attached. I looked around the quiet street. Most of my neighbors had already left for work. The development was relatively new, with about 40 homes total, and I knew maybe 5 people by name. I dragged the bin back to its spot against my garage and made a mental note to keep an eye out for whoever might have dumped their recycling in my bin. But then it happened again the following week, and the week after that. By mid-April, I was getting genuinely annoyed. Not only was someone using my recycling bin, but they were also using my regular trash bin. I started finding garbage bags I had never filled, containing coffee grounds from some fancy brand I could not afford, takeout containers from restaurants I had never ordered from, and an alarming amount of those small yogurt cups with the fancy European names. The real kicker was that whoever was doing this was timing it perfectly. They were adding their trash to my bins after I had put them out for collection, but before the trucks came through. It was deliberate, strategic even. I decided to stay up one Monday night to catch the culprit in action. I positioned myself in my living room with the lights off, watching the street through my front window like some kind of suburban detective. Around 11:30, I saw movement. A woman in a white bathrobe and slippers was walking down the sidewalk carrying 2 large trash bags. She looked both ways, then quickly lifted the lid of my trash bin and deposited both bags inside. She did the same with my recycling bin, adding what looked like another bag full of bottles and cans. The streetlight illuminated her face just enough for me to recognize her. It was Brenda Morrison, the HOA board president. She lived 4 houses down from me in a slightly larger model home with an immaculate front yard that looked like it belonged in a magazine spread. I had met her exactly once, during a mandatory new homeowner orientation meeting where she had spent 45 minutes explaining the rules about mailbox colors and acceptable garden gnome heights. I was stunned. The HOA president was stealing my trash service. The woman who sent out violation notices for leaving your bins out an hour too late after collection was dumping her garbage in my bins like some kind of hypocritical midnight phantom. I watched her shuffle back to her house, and I sat there in the dark, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Part of me wanted to run outside and confront her right then, but something held me back. I needed to think this through. Brenda Morrison was not just any neighbor. She had power in this community. She could make my life miserable if I handled this wrong. The next morning, I called the waste management company. A cheerful woman named Rita answered after the 3rd ring. Scottsdale Waste Solutions. How can I help you today? Hi, I have a question about my service. My account number is 847,392. I'm at 2156 Desert Bloom Drive. Sure thing, let me pull that up. Okay, Mr. Quincy, what can I do for you? I was wondering if you could tell me if anyone else in my neighborhood shares trash service or if everyone needs their own account. Rita paused. Each residential address requires its own service agreement and account. Are you having an issue with your service? Someone has been using my bins. Like, consistently adding their trash to mine before collection. Is that something people do? Is there like a shared account situation I'm not aware of? No, sir. That's actually against our service agreement terms. Each account is for the specific address only. If someone else is using your bins, they're essentially stealing service, and they need to set up their own account. What if it's the HOA president doing it? There was a long silence. That would still be theft of service, Mr. Quincy. We take this seriously. Would you like to file a formal complaint? I thought about it. Filing a formal complaint might escalate things quickly, and I was not sure I was ready for that level of confrontation with Brenda. Not yet. I wanted to confirm the rules first. What happens if I do file a complaint? We would investigate. We'd need evidence, like photos or video. Then we would contact the person and inform them they need their own service. If they refuse or continue, we can pursue it further. We've dealt with situations like this before, believe it or not. Really? Oh yeah. You'd be surprised how often people try to save the $38 a month by using a neighbor's bins. $38 a month. Brenda Morrison, who drove a brand new Lexus SUV and had recently installed a custom water feature in her front yard, was stealing my trash service to save $38 a month. It was almost insulting in its pettiness. Thanks for the information, Rita. I'll be in touch if I need to file that complaint. Anytime, Mr. Quincy. Have a great day. I hung up and stood in my kitchen, staring at the HOA violation notice that had been placed on my door the previous week. It was a warning about my grass being a quarter inch too long according to the community standards. The notice was signed by Brenda Morrison in her capacity as HOA board president. The irony was not lost on me. Over the next few weeks, I documented everything. I set up my phone on a tripod in my front window and recorded video every Monday and Thursday night before trash collection. Sure enough, Brenda appeared like clockwork, usually between 11 and midnight, depositing her household waste in my bins. I took screenshots showing her face clearly visible in the streetlight. I photographed the contents of the bins before and after her visits, documenting the additional trash that was definitely not mine. By early May, I had compiled an impressive dossier of evidence. I had video from 8 separate occasions, dozens of photos, and detailed notes about times and dates. I was ready to confront her, but I wanted to do it smart. I decided to approach Brenda directly first, before involving the waste company or escalating to any kind of official complaint. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe she was somehow confused about how trash service worked. Maybe she thought we had some kind of shared arrangement I was not aware of. These were all generous interpretations, but I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. On a Saturday morning in mid-May, I walked down to Brenda's house. It was a beautiful spring day in Scottsdale, the temperature still comfortable before the brutal summer heat would arrive. Her front yard was, as always, pristine. The grass was perfectly manicured at exactly the regulation height. Her hedges were trimmed into precise geometric shapes. Even her driveway looked like it had been recently pressure washed. I rang the doorbell and waited. After a moment, Brenda opened the door. She was in her late 50s, with short blonde hair styled in that particular way that screamed, "I need to speak to your manager." She wore white capri pants and a coral-colored blouse, and she looked at me with the vague smile of someone trying to place a face. "Lucas, right? From down the street." "That's right. Hi, Brenda, do you have a minute to talk?" Her smile tightened slightly. "Of course. Is this about HOA business? Because if you want to contest that violation notice about your grass, you need to submit a written appeal to the board." "No, it's not about that. It's about trash collection." "Trash collection?" She looked genuinely confused, which I had to admit was a good performance. "Yeah, someone has been using my trash bins, adding their garbage to mine before collection. It's been happening for months now." Her expression did not change. "Oh, how strange. Have you talked to your neighbors on either side? Maybe someone is confused about which bins are theirs." "I don't think it's confusion, Brenda. I've been documenting it. I have video." That got a reaction. Her smile vanished completely, replaced by a carefully neutral expression that was somehow more unsettling. "Video?" "Yeah, clear video showing who's been using my bins." I paused, watching her face. "It's you, Brenda. You've been putting your trash in my bins for months." The silence that followed was excruciating. Brenda stood in her doorway, her hand still on the door handle, her face cycling through several emotions before settling on indignant offense. "Excuse me. Are you accusing me of stealing your trash service?" "I'm not accusing you. I'm telling you what I've documented. I have video of you multiple times coming to my house late at night and putting bags in my bins." "That's ridiculous. Why would I do that?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. You have your own trash service, right?" Brenda's jaw tightened. "Of course I do. So why are you using mine?" "I'm not." She crossed her arms. "And I find it very concerning that you're apparently recording the neighborhood at night. That seems like a violation of privacy, doesn't it? Maybe that's something the HOA board needs to discuss." I could not believe what I was hearing. She was actually trying to flip this around on me. "Brenda, I'm recording my own property. That's completely legal. What's not legal is using someone else's trash service without permission." "I think you're mistaken about what you saw." "I'm not mistaken. It's clear video. Your face is completely visible. I can see your bathrobe, your slippers, even the specific bags you're carrying." Her face flushed red. "You're harassing me. This is harassment. I could report you to the board." "You are the board president, Brenda." "I could report you to the police then." "For what?" "Catching you stealing my trash service on video. Please do. I'd love to explain the situation to them." We stared at each other for a long moment. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out her next move. Finally, she took a different approach, her voice softening slightly. "Lucas, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maybe on a few occasions, if my bins were full, I might have. I might have accidentally put something in the wrong bin in the dark. But it certainly wasn't intentional, and it definitely hasn't been happening for months like you're suggesting. I have 8 separate videos spanning from late March until now. That's not accidental. Those could be anyone in a bathrobe. Brenda, I can see your face. And I recognize your bathrobe. You wore it to collect your newspaper the other day." She flinched at that detail. "This is absurd, over some trash, really. You're going to make a big deal over this. You've been stealing a service I pay for months, while simultaneously sending me violation notices about my grass being slightly too long. Yeah, I'm going to make a deal about it. I'll tell you what." Her voice was tight now, controlled. "I'll be more careful about which bins I use. How about that? Problem solved." "That's not solving the problem, Brenda. The solution is you stop using my bins entirely and use your own service. My bins are often full. Then maybe you need a larger bin size. The waste company offers different sizes." I shouldn't have to pay extra just because I generate a normal amount of household waste. There it was. The real reason. She did not want to pay for a larger bin size. It probably cost an extra $10 or $15 a month. She would rather steal my service than pay a bit more for adequate service of her own. Brenda, you need to stop using my bins. Today. If I see it happen again, I'm filing a formal complaint with the waste company. Her eyes narrowed. You know, Lucas, this neighborhood operates on cooperation and goodwill. People who can't be neighborly often find that life here becomes uncomfortable. HOA boards have a lot of discretion in enforcement. Maybe your grass has been too long more often than just that one time. Maybe your car is parked in the driveway too frequently. Maybe the shade of beige on your house trim is not quite within the approved color palette. I could not believe she was threatening me. Are you seriously trying to intimidate me right now, over getting caught stealing my trash service? I'm not intimidating anyone. I'm just reminding you that we all live in a community with rules, and those rules need to be enforced fairly. But enforcement can be flexible, or it can be very strict. It depends on the relationship between homeowners and the board. So you're saying if I report you for stealing my trash service, you'll abuse your position on the HOA board to harass me with violation notices? I'm not saying anything of the sort. I'm just encouraging you to think carefully about the kind of neighbor you want to be. I took a deep breath. This conversation had gone exactly as badly as I had feared it might. Brenda, I'm going to make this really simple. Stop using my bins. Set up proper trash service for your own household needs. If you don't, I'm reporting you to the waste company and providing them with all my documentation. This is your one warning. I think you should leave my property now. Gladly. I turned and walked back down her pristine driveway, feeling her eyes boring into my back the entire way. That night, despite our conversation, Brenda came to my house again. I watched from my window as she approached my bins with 2 bags of trash. But this time, when she saw me standing there in the window, clearly visible and clearly watching her, she froze. We made eye contact. She stood there for a long moment, bags in hand, then turned around and walked back to her house. I thought maybe the direct confrontation had worked. Maybe she would stop now, but I was wrong. The next morning, I found a violation notice on my front door. This one cited me for having my recycling bin positioned 6 inches beyond the acceptable placement zone in my driveway. The notice was dated and timed for 6 a.m., barely an hour after trash collection would have happened. Brenda must have gotten up early specifically to document this petty violation. Over the next week, I received 3 more notices. One for a small oil stain on my driveway that allegedly violated the community cleanliness standards. One for a package that had been left on my porch for more than 24 hours, which apparently violated some rule about exterior storage. And one for my front door wreath being too large according to the decoration guidelines. Each notice was signed by Brenda Morrison and came with a warning that continued violations could result in fines starting at $100 per incident. She was making good on her threat. This was retaliation, pure and simple. I called a lawyer. His name was Mitchell Frank, and he specialized in HOA disputes in the Phoenix metro area. His secretary fit me in for a consultation that same week. So let me get this straight, Mitchell said, leaning back in his office chair. He was in his mid-40s, with graying hair and the patient expression of someone who had heard every ridiculous HOA story imaginable. The HOA president has been stealing your trash service. You confronted her about it, and now she's bombarding you with violation notices. That's exactly what's happening. And you have video documentation of her using your bins, 8 separate videos over the course of about 2 months, clear footage, time-stamped, showing her face. Mitchell nodded slowly. Okay, this is definitely retaliatory behavior. The question is how you want to handle it. You could report her to the waste company, which might resolve the trash issue but probably won't stop the HOA harassment. You could file a complaint against the HOA board for retaliation, but that's a longer legal process. Or you could try to negotiate some kind of resolution. I don't want to negotiate with someone who's been stealing from me and then threatening me when I called her out on it. I understand that, but I want you to understand what you're getting into if you push this. HOA disputes can get ugly and expensive. Brenda has the power of the board behind her, and even if she's abusing that power, it takes time and money to fight it. So she just gets away with it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be strategic. Let's start with the waste company. File your complaint, provide your evidence. Let them handle the theft of service issue. That removes you from the direct confrontation. Meanwhile, document every violation notice she sends you. Take photos proving that you're actually in compliance. Build a paper trail showing the pattern of retaliation. And then what? Then, if she continues the harassment, we file a formal complaint alleging abuse of authority and retaliation. We can also request a review of her position on the board. Most HOA governing documents have provisions for removing board members who abuse their authority. How much is all this going to cost me? My retainer for HOA cases starts at $3,000. But honestly, if you handle the waste company complaint yourself and just document the violations carefully, you might not need me at all. A lot of these situations resolve themselves once the aggressor realizes the other person is serious about fighting back. I left Mitchell's office with a business card and a plan. First step, file the formal complaint with Scottsdale Waste Solutions. I called Rita back the next day and told her I was ready to file a complaint. She walked me through the process, and I emailed over my documentation. All 8 videos, showing clear footage of Brenda Morrison depositing trash bags into my bins on 8 separate occasions over a 2-month period. Photos of the trash contents before and after. Timestamps for everything. This is very thorough documentation, Mr. Quincy, Rita said when she called me back 2 days later. I've reviewed everything, and I've discussed it with my supervisor. We're going to send someone to speak with Miss Morrison about setting up proper service for her residents. What happens if she denies it or refuses? We've got her on video. There's not much to deny. And if she refuses to set up service and continues using yours, that's when we start looking at legal options for theft of service. But usually, once we make contact and explain the situation, people comply. Nobody wants this to escalate to a legal issue. Even if that person is an HOA board president who thinks she's above the rules, Rita laughed. Especially then. People in positions like that usually don't want attention on their rule breaking. I'd be surprised if this doesn't resolve quickly once we make contact. A week later, I received a call from Rita with an update. Good news, Mr. Quincy. We met with Miss Morrison. She initially denied everything, but when we showed her the video evidence, she changed her tune. She's set up her own account with upgraded service to accommodate her household needs. She's been specifically informed that using your bins again would constitute theft of service and could result in legal action. That's it. She just gets away with months of stealing my service. Well, we did charge her a 3-month retroactive service fee as a penalty. That was about $115, and she had to pay the setup fee for her new account plus the first 2 months upfront, so it cost her something. $115. It seemed like a slap on the wrist for months of deliberate theft, but at least the problem was solved. Or so I thought. The violation notices did not stop. If anything, they intensified. Brenda seemed determined to find something, anything, to cite me for. Over the next month, I received notices about my mailbox being a quarter-inch out of vertical alignment, my front porch light being the wrong shade of white, and my garage door being open for more than 2 consecutive hours on a Saturday when I was doing yard work. Each notice came with increasing fine amounts. She had moved from warnings to actual monetary penalties, starting with $50 and escalating to $200 for what she claimed were repeated violations of the same issues. I documented everything meticulously. I took photos showing that my mailbox was perfectly straight, that my porch light matched the specifications in the HOA guidelines, and that there was no rule limiting how long garage doors could be opened during daytime hours. I sent formal appeal letters to the HOA board for each violation, carefully laying out why each citation was invalid. But here was the problem. Brenda was the board president, and the other 2 board members were her friends. Every single appeal I submitted was denied. The form letters I received back were identical, stating that the board had reviewed my appeal and found the violation notice to be valid. By late June, I was facing nearly $1,000 in alleged fines for violations I could prove I had not committed. The HOA sent me a letter stating that if I did not pay within 30 days, they would place a lien on my property. That was when I called Mitchell Frank again. "She's escalated significantly," Mitchell said after I laid out everything that had happened since our last conversation. "This is textbook retaliation, and now she's threatening your property rights. We need to respond formally. What do you recommend?" We filed 2 things simultaneously. First, a formal complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate. They regulate HOAs in Arizona and take abuse of authority seriously. Second, we send a cease and desist letter to Brenda and the HOA board, putting them on notice that we consider this retaliatory harassment and that continued actions will result in litigation. Will that stop her? It should. Once lawyers get involved, most people back down, and the complaint with the state will trigger an investigation. If they find evidence of retaliation and abuse of authority, they can sanction the HOA, remove board members, and even dissolve the board in extreme cases. Let's do it. Mitchell drafted a detailed cease and desist letter that laid out the entire timeline. My initial complaint about the trash bin usage. Brenda's theft of service as documented and confirmed by the waste company. Her explicit threat to use her HOA authority to retaliate against me. The subsequent flood of baseless violation notices. The escalating fines for violations I could prove I had not committed. The denial of all my appeals by a board that was biased in Brenda's favor. The letter demanded immediate cessation of all retaliatory actions, withdrawal of all pending fines, and a written apology. It also put them on notice that I was filing a complaint with the state, and that any further retaliation would result in a lawsuit for harassment, abuse of authority, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We sent the letter via certified mail to Brenda Morrison, to the other 2 board members, and to the HOA's registered agent. We also sent a copy to the management company that handled some of the HOA's administrative functions. The response came faster than I expected, but not from who I expected. 3 days after the letters were delivered, I received a call from one of the other board members, a man named Robert Chen. He lived on the opposite end of the development, and I had maybe seen him twice in the 18 months I had been there. "Mr. Quincy, This is Robert Chen from the HOA board. I received your attorney's letter and I wanted to reach out to you directly. Okay. I'll be honest with you. I had no idea about most of what was in that letter. The trash bin situation, Brenda's threats to you, the pattern of violation notices. I just sign off on the weekly reports Brenda sends around. So you've been rubber stamping her decisions without actually reviewing them. I'm not proud of it, but yes. I have a demanding job, and I trusted Brenda to handle the day-to-day HOA stuff. That was clearly a mistake. What happens now? I've talked to Jennifer, the other board member. We've both reviewed all the violation notices that have been issued to you over the past 2 months. Honestly, Mr. Quincy, most of them are either completely fabricated or so minor that they never should have progressed beyond a friendly reminder. None of them should have resulted in fines. I tried to tell you that in my appeals. I know, and I apologize. Those appeals should have been granted. Look, Jennifer and I have discussed this, and we're calling for an emergency board meeting tomorrow night. We're going to review Brenda's conduct and the handling of your violations. I can't make any promises about what will happen, but I want you to know that we're taking this seriously. Is Brenda going to be at this meeting? She's required to be there. It's a formal board meeting. Can I attend? HOA members have the right to attend board meetings and speak during the public comment period. I'll make sure you have time to address the board. The next evening, I walked into the community clubhouse where the HOA board meetings were held. It was a small building near the development's entrance, with a main room that could hold maybe 50 people. Tonight, there were about 20 residents there, which was apparently a much larger turnout than usual. Word had spread that something interesting was going down. Brenda sat at a folding table at the front of the room with Robert Chen and Jennifer Walsh on either side of her. She looked furious. Her face was pinched tight, and she refused to make eye contact with anyone in the audience. Robert called the meeting to order and quickly moved through some standard procedural items. Then he got to the main event. We're here tonight to address allegations of improper conduct by a board member, specifically regarding the issuance of violation notices to a homeowner and questions about retaliation. Mr. Lucas Quincy has raised concerns that I believe merit the full board's attention and the community's awareness. This is completely inappropriate, Brenda interrupted. Personnel matters should be discussed in executive session, not in a public meeting. This isn't a personnel matter, Brenda. This is a question of whether the board has been conducting itself properly in its enforcement actions. That's absolutely something that should be discussed publicly. Robert turned to me. Mr. Quincy, would you like to address the board? I stood up and walked to the front of the room. I had prepared notes, but I also had something better. I had my phone with the videos queued up. In late March, I noticed someone was using my trash bins, adding their own garbage to mine before collection. This went on for months. I documented it with video surveillance of my own property. I connected my phone to the projector that was set up for the meeting and played one of the videos. The room watched in silence as Brenda, clearly visible in her white bathrobe, walked up to my bins and deposited trash bags. There were murmurs from the audience. I played a second video from a different date, then a third. After compiling this evidence, I approached Mrs. Morrison directly to discuss the situation. During that conversation, she explicitly told me that if I reported this to the waste company, life in this neighborhood would become uncomfortable for me. She specifically mentioned that HOA enforcement could be flexible or strict, depending on my cooperation. I pulled up the photo timeline of violation notices on my phone. Following my report to the waste management company, which confirmed that Mrs. Morrison was stealing my trash service and required her to set up her own account. I received 15 violation notices over the course of 6 weeks. These notices cited increasingly petty and often fabricated violations. I showed the photos I had taken proving that many of the violations were false. The mailbox that was actually straight, the porch light that matched specifications, the garage door that was open during permitted hours. I appealed every single violation through the proper channels. Every single appeal was denied by the board. I'm now facing nearly $1,000 in fines for violations I can prove I did not commit, and the HOA has threatened to place a lien on my property if I don't pay. The room had gone completely silent except for the sound of people shifting in their seats. This is retaliation, pure and simple. Mrs. Morrison got caught stealing my trash service, and she used her authority as board president to punish me for reporting it. That's an abuse of power, and it's exactly why I've filed a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate and retained an attorney. I looked directly at Brenda. I don't want to sue the HOA. I don't want to create drama in this community. I just want the harassment to stop, the bogus fines to be withdrawn, and some assurance that this won't happen to me or anyone else again. Robert cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Quincy. Mrs. Morrison, do you want to respond to these allegations? Brenda's face was red. This is a witch hunt. I've done nothing wrong. Every violation notice I issued was valid according to the HOA guidelines. If Mr. Quincy has problems with our community standards, maybe he should live somewhere without an HOA. What about the trash bins? Jennifer Walsh spoke up for the first time. She was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. We all just watched video of you using his bins multiple times. That's been resolved with the waste company. It has nothing to do with the HOA. It does when you threatened him over it, Robert said. Did you tell him that enforcement would become stricter if he reported you? I said no such thing. He's twisting my words. Mrs. Morrison, I've reviewed all 15 violation notices you issued to Mr. Quincy. I've also looked at the violation notices issued to other homeowners during the same time period. You know what I found? Brenda said nothing. You issued 3 violation notices to other homeowners during those 6 weeks, a total of 3 for the entire rest of the neighborhood. But 15 to Mr. Quincy alone, all within 6 weeks, all after he reported you to the waste company, several for violations that are questionable at best. Does that seem like fair and unbiased enforcement to you? I enforce the rules as I see violations. It's not my fault if Mr. Quincy's property had more issues than others. His mailbox was cited as being out of alignment. I went and looked at it myself this afternoon. It's perfectly straight. His porch light was cited as being the wrong shade of white. I checked the bulb against the guidelines. It's exactly the approved color temperature. His garage door being open was cited as a violation, but there's no rule in our governing documents about how long garage doors can be opened during daytime hours. Those are judgment calls. No, Brenda. Those are made-up violations, and you know it. Robert looked at Jennifer. I move that we void all violation notices and associated fines issued to Mr. Quincy over the past 6 weeks. Seconded, Jennifer said immediately. All in favor, Robert and Jennifer both said, aye. Opposed. Brenda glared at them. Opposed? This is a joke. You're letting a resident who's violated multiple community standards off the hook because he hired a lawyer to threaten us. The motion passes 2-1. Mr. Quincy, all fines are hereby withdrawn. Robert made a note in the meeting minutes. Now for the second matter. I move that we open an investigation into Mrs. Morrison's conduct as board president and her handling of enforcement matters. Seconded, Jennifer said. You can't do this. Brenda stood up. I've been on this board for 4 years. I've kept this community running smoothly. Property values have gone up. We've had 0 major issues. And you're going to throw me under the bus because of one whiny homeowner who doesn't want to follow the rules. Sit down, Brenda. Robert's voice was firm. This isn't about one whiny homeowner. This is about you abusing your authority for personal reasons. You stole from a member of this community, then you retaliated against him when he called you out on it. That's inexcusable. I'm the president of this board. You can't just remove me. Actually, we can. According to our bylaws, a 2/3 vote of the board can remove a member for cause. Abuse of authority definitely qualifies as cause. You need 2/3, that's 2 out of 3. You and Jennifer can't remove me without my own vote. Jennifer spoke up. We're not voting tonight. We're opening an investigation, which only requires a simple majority. That investigation will include reviewing all violation notices you've issued over the past year, interviewing homeowners about their interactions with you, and examining your handling of HOA funds and resources. Once we have all the facts, we'll present our findings to the full community and hold a vote about your continued service on the board. The community will support me. Everyone here knows how hard I've worked for this neighborhood. Robert looked out at the audience. Is there anyone here who wants to speak in support of Mrs. Morrison's conduct as board president? The silence was deafening. I looked around the room at the other homeowners. Some were looking down at their laps. Others were staring at Brenda with expressions ranging from surprise to disgust. No one raised their hand. No one spoke up. Anyone? Robert asked again. Anyone at all? More silence. What about opposition? Does anyone want to speak about problems they've had with the board or with Mrs. Morrison specifically? 3 hands went up, then 5, then 8. More than 1/3 of the people in the room were raising their hands. All right, we'll take comments. Please keep them brief. The next 20 minutes were eye-opening. One by one, homeowners stood up and shared their experiences with Brenda. A man who had been fined $500 because his house number plaque was a 1/4 inch too small according to Brenda's interpretation of the rules. A woman who had been cited for having too many flowers in her front garden because Brenda decided it looked cluttered. Another man who had been threatened with fines when he tried to install a solar panel system that was explicitly allowed under state law and the HOA guidelines. The stories went on and on. It became clear that I was not Brenda's only victim. I was just the first one to push back hard enough to expose what was happening. By the time the last person finished speaking, Brenda looked shaken. Robert and Jennifer looked grimly determined. I think we've heard enough, Robert said. Mrs. Morrison, the investigation will proceed. You're suspended from your enforcement duties effective immediately. Any violation notices that need to be issued will be reviewed and approved by both Jennifer and myself before being sent to homeowners. Do you understand? This is illegal. I'm going to sue the HOA for wrongful removal. You haven't been removed yet. You've been suspended from specific duties pending an investigation. That's completely within the board's authority. If you want to consult with an attorney about your rights, feel free to do so. Brenda grabbed her papers and her purse. I don't have to sit here and listen to this. She stormed out of the clubhouse, leaving the door swinging behind her. The meeting continued for a bit longer, but the energy had shifted. People were talking among themselves, comparing notes about their experiences with Brenda. A few people came up to me afterward to thank me for standing up to her. I got 2 violation notices last year that were total bull, one man told me. But I just paid the fines because I didn't want to deal with the hassle of fighting them. I wish I had documented everything like you did. Robert Chen approached me as I was leaving. Mr. Quincy, I want to apologize again for not paying closer attention to what was happening. I took Brenda at her word that she was handling things properly, and that was naive of me. This investigation is going to be thorough, and I promise you that we'll make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. I appreciate that. What happens next? Jennifer and I are going to review every violation notice, fine, and enforcement action from the past 2 years. We're going to interview homeowners who have had issues with the board. We're also going to audit the HOA finances to make sure everything is above board. Once we have all that information compiled, we'll present it at the next monthly meeting and ask the community to vote on whether Brenda should be removed from the board. How long will that take? Probably about a month. We want to be thorough. But in the meantime, you don't have to worry about any more harassment. Like I said, she's suspended from enforcement duties. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The fines were gone. Brenda was suspended. The investigation was happening. It felt like justice was actually working for once. But I should have known it would not be that simple. 2 days later, I came home from work to find that someone had spray painted the word snitch across my garage door in red paint. My mailbox had been knocked over, and there were eggs splattered across my front door and windows. I immediately called the police. An officer named Tom Bradley showed up about 20 minutes later. He was in his mid-30s, professional and thorough as he documented the vandalism. "Any idea who might have done this?" he asked as he took photos. "I have a pretty good idea, but I don't have proof." "Want to tell me about it?" I explained the situation with Brenda Morrison and the HOA. The trash bins, the retaliation, the board meeting, her suspension. Officer Bradley listened carefully, taking notes. "So you think Mrs. Morrison did this out of revenge?" "I think either she did it, or she knows who did. This happened less than 48 hours after she was suspended at that board meeting." "Does your security camera cover the front of your house?" "I have a doorbell camera, but whoever did this must have known about it. The angle doesn't cover the garage door or the mailbox area." "Smart vandals, then, or lucky ones." He finished his notes. "I'm going to file a report and do some follow-up investigation. You said the HOA board meeting was recorded. I'd like to get a copy of that if possible. I can put you in touch with Robert Chen. He's handling the investigation into Brenda." Officer Bradley gave me his card and left. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning egg off my windows and trying to scrub spray paint off my garage door. The paint had soaked into the wood pretty deeply. I was going to need to repaint the entire door. That evening, I called Mitchell Frank again and updated him on everything. "This is escalating into criminal behavior," he said. "The vandalism, the spray painting, that's property damage. If Brenda's behind it, we're talking about potential criminal charges in addition to the civil issues. The police are investigating, but I don't know if they'll be able to prove anything. Keep me posted. In the meantime, I'd recommend installing more security cameras. Cover every angle of your property. If she tries something again, we need to catch her in the act." I took his advice. The next day, I had a professional security company come out and install a full camera system. 6 cameras covering my front yard, driveway, garage, backyard, and both sides of my house. Everything was recording to a cloud server with 2 weeks of storage. If anyone came near my property again, I would have it documented in high definition. The cameras proved their worth faster than I expected. 3 nights later, around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I grabbed it and pulled up the camera app. Someone dressed in dark clothes and a hood was approaching my front door. I watched on my phone as the figure placed something on my doorstep, then quickly walked away. The camera captured them heading down the street and getting into a car that was parked about 5 houses down. I could not see the license plate clearly, but I got a partial and the make and model of the vehicle. I waited until they drove away, then went outside to see what they had left. It was a dead rat in a shoebox with a note that said, "Mind your own business." I took photos of everything without touching it, then called the police. Officer Bradley came back out. "This is harassment, possibly criminal threatening depending on how the DA wants to interpret it," he said as he examined the box. "And we've got them on camera. Can you send me that footage?" "Already done. I emailed it to you before you got here." "Perfect. The partial plate might be enough for us to work with, especially combined with the make and model. I'm going to follow up on this aggressively. This has gone beyond a neighborhood dispute. Do you think it's Brenda?" "I don't want to speculate, but let's put it this way. I'm going to be very interested to find out who owns that vehicle." The next day, Officer Bradley called me with an update. We traced the vehicle. It's registered to Brenda Morrison's daughter, Emily Morrison. She's 24, lives in Mesa. We contacted her, and she initially denied being anywhere near your neighborhood that night, but when we told her we had her on video, she changed her story. "What did she say?" "She admitted to leaving the box on your doorstep. She says her mother asked her to do it as a prank to scare you. She claims she didn't know it would be taken seriously, and that she thought the whole situation was just a stupid neighborhood drama. A dead rat with a threatening note is not a prank." That's what I told her. She's being charged with criminal harassment and threatening. As for Brenda Morrison, we're investigating her involvement. Asking someone else to commit a crime is conspiracy, and if we can prove she directed her daughter to do this, she'll face charges too. Things moved quickly after that. The police interviewed Brenda, who made the mistake of lying about her contact with her daughter. She claimed they had not spoken in weeks, but phone records showed multiple calls between them in the days leading up to the rat incident, including one call that lasted 18 minutes, just hours before Emily showed up at my house. Faced with evidence of the phone calls, Emily changed her story again. This time she admitted that her mother had specifically asked her to leave something threatening on my doorstep to scare me into dropping the HOA complaint. Brenda had even provided the dead rat, which she had apparently caught in a trap in her garage. The police arrested Brenda Morrison on charges of conspiracy to commit harassment and conspiracy to commit criminal threatening. She was released on bail the same day, but the damage was done. The arrest was public record, and within hours, everyone in the neighborhood knew about it. The HOA's investigation took on a new urgency after the criminal charges. Robert Chen and Jennifer Walsh discovered some concerning financial irregularities during their audit. Brenda had been using HOA funds for personal expenses, disguising them as legitimate community costs. She had charged over $3,000 in restaurant meals as board meeting expenses, even though the board rarely met for meals. She had paid herself a $500 monthly administrative fee that was not authorized anywhere in the HOA governing documents. None of it was enough to be massive embezzlement, but it showed a pattern of using her position for personal benefit. Combined with the trash bin theft, the retaliatory violation notices, and now the criminal harassment charges, the picture was clear. Brenda Morrison had been treating the HOA as her personal fiefdom and had felt entitled to do whatever she wanted without consequences. The vote to remove her from the board was held at the next monthly meeting in early August. It was not close. Out of 35 homeowners who attended, 33 voted to remove her. 1 voted against, and 1 abstained. Even accounting for the homeowners who did not attend, it was an overwhelming rejection. Brenda did not attend the meeting. She sent a letter that was read aloud by Robert Chen. In it, she maintained her innocence on all charges and accused me of orchestrating a campaign to destroy her reputation. She claimed to be the victim of a vindictive neighbor who had manipulated the community and the authorities. The letter was not well received. The criminal case took several months to work through the system. Emily Morrison pleaded guilty to criminal harassment and received probation and community service. She also had to pay restitution for the cost of repainting my garage door and replacing my mailbox. Brenda's case was more complicated. She maintained her innocence and hired a lawyer to fight the charges, but the evidence was damning. The phone records showing her contact with Emily's testimony that Brenda had directed her to leave the threatening package, the dead rat that had been traced back to a trap system in Brenda's garage, the spray paint can that match the color used on my garage door that was found in Brenda's trash after a police search. Her lawyer eventually negotiated a plea deal. Brenda pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of conspiracy to commit harassment. She received 18 months of probation, a $1,000 fine, and 200 hours of community service. She was also required to write me a formal letter of apology, though I suspected her lawyer had actually written it. The letter was brief and legalistic, expressing regret for her actions without actually acknowledging what those actions were. I did not care. I did not need her genuine remorse. I just needed her to leave me alone, and the probation terms included a no-contact order that prevented her from coming anywhere near me or my property. The HOA also pursued a civil case to recover the funds Brenda had misappropriated. She eventually agreed to pay back $4,000 plus interest to avoid further legal action. She put her house up for sale in October and moved out of the neighborhood by December. I heard through the grapevine that she relocated somewhere in Nevada, though I did not care enough to verify that information. The new HOA board, now expanded to 5 members instead of 3, implemented a series of reforms. All violation notices had to be reviewed and approved by at least 2 board members before being sent to homeowners. Financial expenditures over $100 required board approval with documentation. Monthly financial statements were published to all homeowners for transparency. And there was a new anonymous complaint process for reporting board member misconduct. The neighborhood felt different after everything settled down. People seemed more engaged with the HOA, more willing to attend meetings and speak up. Several homeowners who had been cited by Brenda for questionable violations had their cases reviewed and resolved. The board even revised some of the more absurd community standards that Brenda had been so zealous about enforcing. As for me, I finally felt like I could relax in my own home. My trash bins stayed exclusively mine, though I had upgraded to a camera system that would immediately alert me if anyone touched them. I never received another violation notice, though I made sure to keep my property in good condition because I actually took pride in it, not because I was afraid of arbitrary enforcement. The whole experience taught me some valuable lessons about standing up to bullies, even when they have institutional authority behind them. It taught me the importance of documentation and evidence. It taught me that sometimes you have to spend money on lawyers and security systems to protect your rights, and that investment is worth it. Most importantly, it taught me that abuse of power thrives on silence and compliance. Brenda had been getting away with her behavior for years, because most people found it easier to just pay the bogus fines or overlook the petty tyranny rather than fight back. It took one person refusing to accept it, documenting everything, and pushing back consistently to expose the whole rotten system. Mitchell Frank, my lawyer, sent me a final bill that was lower than I expected. He included a note that said, "Thanks for being a client who actually documents everything. Made my job easy. Most people come to me after months of abuse with no evidence. You came with a complete case file. More people should be like you." I framed that note and hung it in my home office. A year after everything went down, I ran into Robert Chen at the neighborhood pool. He was there with his family, and we chatted for a bit while his kids played in the water. "You know, that whole situation with Brenda was a wake-up call for a lot of us," he said. "I was way too hands-off as a board member, just rubber stamping whatever she wanted. I learned that being on an HOA board is actually a responsibility, not just a title." "How's the new board working out?" "Really well, actually. We have actual discussions now. We debate things. We check each other. It's more time-consuming, but it's how it should have been all along. Any regrets about how it all played out? Only that we didn't catch on sooner. But I'm glad you pushed back when you did. Who knows how much longer it would have gone on if you hadn't." I thought about that conversation a lot over the following months. How many other neighborhoods had their own version of Brenda Morrison? How many HOA boards operated like personal dictatorships because homeowners were too busy or too intimidated to push back? How many petty tyrants were out there, abusing minor amounts of authority for their own satisfaction? I did not have answers to those questions, but I knew my own situation had worked out as well as it could have. Justice was not always perfect or complete, but in this case, it had been pretty satisfying. Brenda was gone. The neighborhood was healthier. I could put my trash bins out every week without wondering whose garbage would end up in them. And really, at the end of the day, that was all I had wanted from the beginning. To be left alone, to use the services I paid for, and to live in my home without harassment. It was not a lot to ask, but it had required months of effort, thousands of dollars in legal and security expenses, and a willingness to stand up to someone who thought she was untouchable. The trash bins sitting beside my garage are now just trash bins. They are not symbols of a months-long battle or evidence in a criminal case. They are just receptacles for garbage and recycling, serving the boring, mundane purpose they were always meant to serve. Sometimes I walk past them and smile, remembering how something so ordinary became the catalyst for exposing corruption and abuse in my community. It started with someone stealing my trash service to save $38 a month, and ended with criminal charges, board reforms, and a neighborhood that learned to hold its leaders accountable. Not bad for a couple of trash bins. My life in Meadowbrook Estates is peaceful now. I know my neighbors better. I attend the occasional HOA meeting just to stay informed. I keep my security cameras running because they are a good investment regardless. And every Monday and Thursday night, I put my trash bins out for collection, knowing that the only garbage going into them is mine. That simple certainty, that basic right to the services I pay for without someone stealing from me or retaliating when I call them out on it, is worth everything I went through to defend it. The story of HOA Karen and my trash bins became something of a legend in the neighborhood. A cautionary tale told to remind people that authority without accountability inevitably leads to abuse, and that sometimes the most important battles are fought over the most mundane things. Because at the end of the day, it was never really about trash bins. It was about respect, fairness, and the principle that no one, not even the HOA board president, is above the rules. Those principles mattered enough to fight for, and I am glad I did.